Guys, it's finally here. It finally dropped. I honestly was thinking this day wouldn't come, but the Thor Love and Thunder trailer finally came out. To be honest, I was losing hope. I thought they would wait till after Multiverse of Madness comes out. I was thinking that Multiverse of Madness, something happens in that movie that's super important to the Thor movie, and so they're just waiting for us to see it before they put it in the trailer so that we avoid spoilers. But obviously that wasn't the case. They were just waiting for a really long time. I guess that was their marketing strategy, but it's finally here. It's not the official trailer. It is a teaser. That's why it's so short, but there's still a lot to unpack here. So why don't we go ahead and do that right now? The trailer begins with Thor running through a field, kind of growing up as he continues to run. We see him during his childhood. We see him kind of middle-aged, kind of middle of his life, younger, but not too old. I don't really know how you define that, especially since he's lived for thousands of years. But in that stage of the scene, when he's that age in the scene, we do see him in kind of a classic Thor costume. So that's a cool throwback to the comics. And then it ends with him finally being the Thor that we all know and love. Next, we see Thor walking through fire and then planting Stormbreaker in the ground, saying his days of violence are over and now his hands will be used as vessels of peace. Something along those lines. And that he wants to find who he is. He wants to find himself, forge his own path. This is showing us that after the events of Endgame, where he gives his kingship to Valkyrie, he has no idea who he is. This is a man who spent thousands of years being trained and told he was a king. And now all of a sudden, by his own choice, he's no longer a king. So he has no idea what he is to do. And so that's kind of where we see Thor right now at the beginning of this movie, or at least at the beginning of this trailer. The next shot confirms that Fat Thor is back. As we see throughout the rest of the trailer, he's not prominent in this movie. That's not the main focus. Thor is going to be back to his buff, sexy self, but they do show him working out to get back to the way he used to be. So hopefully there's this cool Rocky workout type montage in the beginning of the film, which I'm guessing is where this scene is. We then finally get a look at the Guardians of the Galaxy in this film. Star-Lord clearly annoyed with the fact that Thor is not following his lead, showing that the conflict between Star-Lord and Thor, I say conflict loosely, the comedic duo of Thor and Star-Lord will be back in Thor Love and Thunder, as Thor clearly does not think of Star-Lord as a leader. We then transition to Thor leaving the battle scene, choosing not to fight as the rest of the Guardians and a bunch of other people rush in, which is probably why later on we see Thor being dropped off on what seems to be Sakaar. I'm not 100% sure if this is Sakaar or not. I do think this is Sakaar though. Next up, we see a shot of New Asgard, and then we see a boat being carried by two goats. We finally get to see Thor's two goats, Tooth Gasher and Tooth Grinder. After we see the goats, we get our first look at Olympus in the MCU, which is the home of the Greek gods. In Phase 4, Marvel seems to be really expanding what we know about the gods in the MCU. For those of you that are confused, there are not just Norse gods in the MCU. There are multiple gods in the MCU. In fact, in the comics, and in the comic that this series is based off of, Thor, God of Thunder, there are an infinite amount of gods. Now we're talking lowercase g, not uppercase g. But there are Greek gods, Norse gods, Egyptian gods, as we're seeing in the Moon Knight series right now with Khonshu. I believe in Thor Love and Thunder, we'll see an expansion of not only Greek mythology, but a lot more mythologies and a lot more gods. So we get our first look at Olympus. I don't know how they're going to explain where this is in the MCU. In the comics, it's a pocket dimension of Earth, if I remember that correctly. I don't know if they're going to do that again, because Asgard is a place you can literally go to. It's out in space. So I don't know if they're going to do something along those lines, or if they're going to go with the pocket dimension thing. I'm not quite sure, but I'm excited to see what they end up doing and how they explain that. Next, we see Thor on a ship kissing a girl with blue hair. I scourged the internet for who this girl is, and I just could not find anything on her. No comic book reference to this blue-haired girl that I know of, but I could be completely wrong on that. I couldn't find anything. We then get a quick shot of what seems to be Earth, and then Thor opening the Bifrost and smiling. It's good to see him smile again. We then get our first look at Russell Crowe's Zeus. I'm very interested to see what they do with this character. I have this big fear that they're just going to kill him off really quickly. Like, establish that he's super powerful and all this stuff, and then Gorr's just going to kill him super quickly. Now, you're probably asking me, Jackson, who is Gorr? We'll get into him in just a second. We then get a look at Thor and Korg reuniting, and then we get one of the coolest shots of the whole trailer. And that's this shot right here with Thor and Korg looking over the fallen god. Now, this is actually straight out of the comics and of Jason Aaron's comic book run of Thor, God of Thunder, which one of the comics that Taika is using as inspiration for this movie. Now, you might be asking me, Jackson, who is this big old dead creature that Thor and Korg are looking at? And this is one of Thor's friends in the comics. I use friend loosely. This is the corpse of Falgar the Behemoth, and this shot is actually straight out of the comics. With the exception of Korg being there, it's almost shot for shot. Now you might be asking me, why is the Behemoth just laying there dead? And why is Thor looking like that after he sees the Behemoth dead? Well, this goes into the main conflict of this movie. And I'm not going to go into it too much because I don't want to spoil anything, but the main villain of this movie is Christian Bale's Gorr the God Butcher. So Gorr, I'm not going to go into his whole motivations and everything. If you want to know more about Gorr than this brief summary that I'm going to give, go check out Comics Explained, his video about Gorr the God Butcher. He has a ton. He has the full story of Gorr, which is like an hour and 50 minutes long, or you can watch like a brief 9-minute summary. But Gorr wants to kill all the gods. Gorr is one of my favorite comic book villains. Dude is insanely powerful and insanely cool. I mean, look at that design. We then get a look at New Asgard, which has become a massive tourist destination. Then it transitions to showing us King Valkyrie, clearly not happy with her role being in all the conferences and all the things that come with being a king. Then we get to see another glimpse of Olympus and what looks to be two different Thors and Korg and a mysterious lady, a mysterious mystery lady. I can't tell who this is. Just a cool shot showing a statue of Zeus. And then we get a funny little scene with Star-Lord and Thor and the rest of the Guardians. And we get confirmation that Nebula is going to be in this movie. But yeah, for whatever reason, that kind of surprised me that she's in this movie. I don't know why. Probably the biggest scene of this whole trailer is after the title sequence. And we get to see our first look at Reforged Mjolnir. Now, this is not another universe's Mjolnir, but rather the same Mjolnir that was broken in Thor Ragnarok. That is this Mjolnir. And then we see who is wielding it. And it's not Thor. It's not Thor Odinson. It is Mighty Thor, aka Jane Foster. She's back in the MCU, baby. I was really scared when it was announced that she was returning, that this was going to be like some variant from another timeline or universe, but I'm happy to see that that is not the case. In this scene, we see both of these Thors on Earth fighting what seems to be some of Gorr's minions. I can't really tell. It's too dark in the background. And that's our trailer. That's all we get. But let me know what you thought of this trailer down in the comments below. What are you most excited for in this movie? What surprised you? What you think of the trailer? Let me know. But that's about it from me. Until next time, peace out, bro skillets.